Hey, this is Kenneth, and you are listening to Who Asked Us? Deep thoughts, lighthearted conversations. Join us as we discuss our way through the Bible with a growing, rotating panel of guests, none of which claim to be experts on any of this. We hope you get just as much out of these conversations as we did having them. Thanks for listening.
Well, now that we're guaranteed recording, I will say again, my challenge for James is he has a bucket of croutons for our listeners. And every time Adam and Eve takes a bite of the apple, every time that's brought up in conversation, I want to hear a crunch.
Let me try this. I'm going to turn the gain on my microphone all the way up.
Am
I getting really loud?
Yeah.
Yes, you're getting
Am I getting really loud?
It's still not.
No,
It's still not giving
it
me
might
the
be coming
I'm
sound
from
like
that-
spilling
Audacity.
croutons all over.
Yeah, like
This is
I
what
feel
happens.
like
Well-
The quality of the different microphone, it really is letting us down here, James.
Well, I'm too cheap to buy a new microphone. I'm sorry.
Uh-oh.
But all right. So should we? I mean, I know we're already brought up Adam and Eve, but I know Natasha has a hard out today.
I'm sorry. I think Kenneth
it's
might be
fine.
having some recording issues, maybe. Question mark.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, today's too packed for me. I'm doing too many things, you know?
So for this research thing, you had to dress up all fancy.
No, I dressed up for church. Because it's my
Oh.
one day. Because I'm like, I look like a bum all 6 other days when I'm studying. And I need to look like a human being, you know? Like, I need that satisfaction of being like, I can be part of society, you know?
I specifically love dressing my daughter up for church.
Oh my
I always
gosh.
make sure she's wearing something
Oh,
nice,
of
not just like
course.
just not
As
like little
she
shirt and pants.
should. What did you wear today?
Today was I was gonna put her in this dress we got her, just
Uh-huh.
a little little dress, but it was raining,
Yeah.
so instead I put her in we got her jeans, which aren't very common for little babies.
Yeah.
So she's in these nice jeans,
Cute.
and I put her in this it's like a hoodie, but it buttons only up here, and then it kind of goes out almost like a poncho, and it's got
Uh-huh.
flowers all over it.
Uh-huh.
So cute.
Hmm.
Yeah, very
You
adorable.
guys made such a cute kid.
Listen, what can I say? It's all
No?
my wife.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
I've seen
yes,
some ugly
correct.
babies before. I'm just gonna-
Yeah. Yeah,
Not all
yeah.
babies are.
You know how many people said that to me? They're like, listen, I know I tell that to everybody, but I'm telling you right now, I lie to most people. I'm not lying to you. I'm
Yeah.
like, thanks.
Exactly.
No, I actually
Thanks for
mean it.
specifying.
Nah, like a
For
lot of them come out
sure.
looking like little gremlins. Like I don't know, but
Yeah.
Oh,
They
she was a
kinda look like
gremlin.
aliens.
Yes, she was
Yeah.
100% an alien for a little bit.
But
not as
also,
long,
like,
guess, as
I
other
feel like
babies.
sometimes they just look so smushed because they have so much like cheek and rolls and everything. And then I feel like she looks like she looks so adorable. Like, if that makes sense. Like, sometimes I feel like the cheeks and the rolls are like takes away from like the baby.
Mhm.
And I feel like for her, she just looks. I don't know how to describe it. You have to
I think it's
see.
because her eyes are big. She's got
Yeah,
big
she's
ol' eyes.
she has very good like expressions. I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's got
Yeah.
all these facial expressions. She's fat now. Just a
Oh,
heads up.
Really?
She's a little chunky bean.
I
Oh yeah,
just saw
she's
her. I feel
well
like
because
I
she's not
just saw her.
walking.
Oh, that's
You
fair.
know, so like I think she's gearing up, and when she walks, everyone's like she'll drop like
That's
I think a
fair.
pound, and a couple pounds. That'd be crazy.
exercising,
Yeah,
So
exactly.
exciting.
All right, so we diving in. Speaking of babies, original sin. We diving in.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
I want to start off already with a question for you guys.
Love it.
I know
Mhm.
in the last couple of episodes, as we've kind of gone through, we haven't really. I feel like we have the questions we kind of like, have been like mulling over and everything. But as I read through it, I feel like I came up with questions as I went through the chapter itself,
Mm-hmm.
and that aren't specifically talking about original sin yet, or like the purpose of that, or etc. So I almost like, not that we're going to read through the chapter together, but
Yeah.
do you guys want to like kind of just like, does anyone have any comments or questions like just through the chapter generally about like how things are phrased, or just anything specifically that's brought up?
Yes, I would say right off the bat, I just found myself trying to look at different translations very, very briefly just to see if there was really any differences in phrasing. I didn't notice anything that caught my attention in particular, but I don't know if like is that something you guys spent a little bit of time either with this reading or other readings, just looking at different translations of the Bible? Because sometimes I might not be too perceptive of word changes, but I don't know if you guys are.
Yeah, no, usually I think I tend to look through different versions only because I especially like I read in ESV usually. But I'll do ESV and NLT because NLT usually like I don't know, I understand it a little bit more. Like I feel like there's I forgot the differences between all the translations, but there's like word for word and thought for thought, and ESV tends to be word for word, and NLT tends to be thought for thought. So I kind of try to oscillate between both of them depending on what we're reading.
Yeah.
I know NSV is.
I read NLT. Yeah.
NSV is what is it? New Standard Version or no? Oh no, I'm thinking ESV is English Standard Version.
English
right?
Standard Version, correct? Yeah.
What's the other one you just said?
NLT is New Living Translation.
So what exactly is that?
So I try to branch it off of like, again, the word for word, thought for thought. So like the idea behind that is like direct translation versus like the meaning behind the translation. NLT falls into the thought for thought. So it's not like every single word is translated from the exact Hebrew or Greek, but it's trying to like pick up on the essence of what the text is trying to communicate for our context. So it's maybe it's a little bit more relatable. It's not the amplified version is something that I think is like everyday talk, not amplified. I'm mixing it up. There's another one too.
Oh, Amplified Bible.
Amplified Bible, but there's
one,
another
a faithful version
that I'm forgetting of. But it's kind of, I like NLT because I think it's a little bit more everyday language and a little bit easier for us to pick up on and not like need to know the nuances of the original text or the original context to kind of grasp what the writer is trying to communicate with us, if that makes sense.
Well, it's funny you say that because I use the because Kenneth actually put me onto it, the Logos Bible app, and I set it so that I have the English Standard Version, the ESV, as the kids say, and then it has like a study Bible on the side almost, which has been helpful. But at the same time, I'm going like, okay, who decided that? Who did the research here? And I almost am like I'm worried that it's going to get in the way. It's going to be like pre-studied. And that there's things that I might miss because I'm just going to follow the work of those people, so to speak.
Yeah, that's my issue with the thought for thought translations, which I if I'm reading something and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, I want to see kind of what other people thought about it. Then I'll go to like a different Bible translation just to see how other people may have interpreted that.
Yeah.
But I try to stay away from the thought for thought because I don't trust the thoughts. I kind of just want to see.
Yeah.
I want to kind of figure it out given the context and the words. So that's kind of hard. I did have another question. And I'm not Catholic, but is there a particular Bible version that Catholics tend to read more often? I know, for example, in many Protestant traditions, it's hard, at least getting away from maybe our parents' generation, like the King James Version or something like that, which is pretty standard. Is there like a kind of standard version in Catholicism?
James know better than me. I think it's actually King James, but it's funny because like I feel like the way church for Catholics is kind of presented, it's like there's no real requirement to do any. Like they just go, here are the readings that are in these little books that aren't Bibles in the church. So James, you would probably know better than me.
Well, yeah. So after a quick search online, the New American
you
Bible,
see how neither of us know
Revised
the
Edition.
Catholics read you guys?
So I mean, like I remember going through Catholic school, we had, I think it was 9th and 10th grade, we did scripture, so it was all the Old Testament in 9th grade, and then I don't think we focused too much on the New Testament those years, but then we ended up going into like more modern contemporary church history. But yeah, so that was the New American Bible. So we went all through the Old Testament, and I think there's like a couple of like acceptable Bible version or translations used by the Catholic Church. Just from the quick search I did. So the New American Bible, Revised Edition, the New Revised Standard Version, and the Catholic Edition. Oh, no, sorry. That's one edition. New Revised Standard Version, Catholic Edition.
Oh my gosh, that's a mouthful.
So, I know, yeah.
Wow.
And so, so I haven't honestly given it much thought until we actually started talking, like going through these readings and actually like seeing how many different translations there are. That's why I was just curious if anybody had actually kind of compared. So it's very interesting to hear, Natasha, that the New Living Translation,
Translation,
right?
yeah.
The New Living Translation, yeah. That's what I have been reading just for this podcast.
Yeah.
And so that's I had not heard of it in that context of thought for thought
Yeah.
or word for word. And so it's very Kenneth of you, Kenneth, and it's very Natasha of you, Natasha, to like each version.
Yeah, no. I think
the
it's
word for word
very
is more
telling.
Kenneth.
Kenneth made a really good point because I tend to have that like hesitation too. But that's why I think ESV is the most from my understanding is like very accurate in word for word. So I tend to
Mhm.
read ESV first and then like kind of like ruminate on it or like think about it for a while and then go into NLT. The one that I wanted to mention before is there's also like another like I guess category, which is the paraphrase version. And what I instead of saying amplified, what I meant to say was message. Because I think those are the three that I've come across like most often is ESV, NLT, and then message. So I tend to pick one in each category and then go back and forth between those three because there's so many. There's like 10, 15 different versions
Sure.
of like translations and paraphrase, especially what Kenneth said before. I'm like so hesitant with paraphrase because it's like not complete interpretation, but like pretty much like someone was like, this is what I think it's going to say. Like,
Yeah, and who's
completely.
that person?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And so I think a little bit of mistrust in that sense is healthy.
Sure.
Mhm.
And like we should all kind of, put it in context who wrote what we're reading.
Well, that's exactly why like I wanted to kind of go through this and be like, hey, anyone have any questions? Because I specifically ignored the side. I'm sure you could turn it off on the app, but I didn't look into it. But I ignored the side that had all the notes.
Mhm.
And as I went through, I was like, I felt like I was lost all of a sudden. Like, hopefully people who are listening to this are actually like, I'm here because this text is really confusing.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, like, because I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, without any of that context, it's just like, yeah, God said you have no arms and legs now, and you're in the dirt.
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
like,
I'm like, oh, what?
yeah, and that's why like I had some questions, but I'm sure I missed a lot. So like, I mean, I don't know if you guys, I literally have questions for you guys prepared, not like a quiz, but like,
Well, let's do it.
yeah, like, and that's why please interject along the way. I know, I like specifically pre-questioned, but like for example, like first of all, I thought it was interesting that they hadn't been called Adam and Eve yet. I don't know if anybody specifically caught that, but I thought that was interesting. And then at the beginning of Genesis 3, they're just like, and then the serpent was here, and he was actually more crafty than anybody else. And I was like, why? Where did he come from? Why is he crafty? Like, it seems like he's
Why can he
specifically...
speak?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Why does he specifically have characteristics that are different from every other animal that, man has, I forget how it was phrased, has dominance over, right? So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if anybody had thoughts about that. But like even James, like the serpent can speak. Where did that come from? And I know that some people say the
I
serpent's
don't
the
know.
devil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know. It's
I've
not
heard that
specifically
before, yeah.
stated. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's not something that I think recently spent time thinking about, to be honest.
Do you feel like, does anybody think the serpent's the devil?
Oh, well, 100%. I
Yeah.
kind of
It is 100%, yeah.
missed
Yeah.
the question. Well, only because later on, that's exactly in the Bible what they refer to.
Got
him
it.
as,
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And the devil. Well, actually, I don't think I even like that term, the devil, right? Because the devil is actually, I feel, even more confusing.
Yeah.
Of a term to use. Also, yeah, I mean, like, because it's more of a, what's the word? It's more of an illustrative word.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you'd prefer like Lucifer?
No, I think
actually, that's even more confusing.
Is
I
it?
have even more
Wait.
problems with that.
So do you prefer Beelzebub?
No, I actually think
Is that even
it's
more confusing?
Extremely important to just kind of limit your scope to the context of what you're talking about, right? Just because. So in Revelation, that's when it's kind of just he calls that old serpent Satan, the devil, right? Puts all those three names together. It's like that's what I'm talking about. That's great enemy, which is more of a ascribing a bunch of titles to a specific thing that has been opposing humanity from the beginning, right? And that's the concept or the spiritual entity, and I think spirit means non-physical entity. That kind of thing is what it's taught, what the Bible's talking about. So that's why later on in the Bible, when they refer to the serpent as the devil or as Satan. It just means like this is the cosmic enemy of humanity, to be honest.
So
Yeah.
you don't think it's like a fallen angel? Like what I've heard about
Well,
Satan, the
I
devil,
don't think it's
etc.
I don't think it's a fallen angel. And I want you to finish your question just because I think it's gonna shape. what
Also
you're about
because
to
that'd
say.
be more polite.
Nah, I won't. You think I care about being polite? But go ahead.
No, I mean like because from what I've never read about Satan in the Bible. I full transparency for those listening and for you guys, I've never read the Bible straight through. I mean, this podcast came out of a Bible study that Kenneth and I did, and we only did Romans there. So this is like a fresh read for me, which I hope it is for a lot. So I don't know what it says about, I'll say him being the devil, whatever that is. But all the things that I've heard is like, oh, this is a fallen angel that opposed God. And so I don't remember if God sent him down or etc. But basically he became like this like vengeful spirit. And I'm using terms very loosely because I've never heard it specifically said a certain way. And it sounds like it is in this text. So but that's why it always seemed like a specific, I don't want to say person, obviously, but like the antithesis of God, whereas God is a being. It's like, here's this being that is Satan or the devil, or Lucifer, many names for that being almost.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go.
No, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, and that's why I was saying it's just I feel like a lot of those terms. One, I would say culturally, at least in this side of the world, right, in the Western side of the world, a lot of people's understanding of the devil or Satan or the serpent or whatever you want to call it is mostly a work of fiction, right? Coming from like Milton's Paradise Lost, that kind of work. And then a lot of just pagan understandings of spirituality and enemies that just morphed into Christianity over time as the work of the gospel kind of spread through Europe and through those areas. So a lot of thoughts that people have about Satan and devils or whatever are really just fantasy, right? They're just fantasy or colloquialism or just folklore, really a lot of folklore in it. So that's why people are kind of hard pressed when you're reading the Bible. It's actually, you got to kind of read in a lot of things, like read it and say, yeah, well, that's really talking about the devil. That's what people do. Like, so, that's why I'm just cautioning, like, I kind of want to just limit to the scope of what the text is actually saying, because people start reading in a lot of different things about it. Like, I mean, I'm reasoning a lot of things about it too, because some people say like, okay, well, Satan exists, so that's clear. Like, Bible's not saying he doesn't exist, but Bible doesn't also tell you too much about where he comes from or his origin or anything like that.
Well, that was one of my questions, right? Like, where did this snake come from? And if it's this like, this snake that is specifically, I'll say, against man in this moment, right?
This is what I'm saying. Like, that's why it's important to stay in the context, because like you just asked, where did the serpent come from? But like the first verse in chapter 1 literally tells you, right? The serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made.
Yes.
Right. It's just another beast of the field that the Lord God has
that's
made,
what I was going to say is like, so obviously God made this creature. And so then obviously the next logical question is like, well, why did he make this one crafty and tempting to, like in this way that it has this negative influence on man, right? So I feel like that's a fair question. It's almost like God put this pitfall,
Well, I think that ties exactly into, having the tree of knowledge of good and evil at all, right? Like it's, I mean, that's interesting. I haven't thought of it in terms of that, but the reason that people say the tree was there and God told Adam and Eve not to eat from it is because he had to give them, or at least that gave them in some measure free will, so they can choose to obey or disobey.
But that almost sounds like the next step is like he didn't only give you free will, but he was also like, and I'm gonna put in front of you situations where that free will is going to be tested.
He gave temptation as well.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
So because that's how I've thought about it, but I haven't thought about it specifically in that sense. But yeah, as you were saying, Kenneth.
I mean, I've heard that, and lately I just kind of hate that thought more and more. I love using
what thought specifically?
Strong words like I hate your
so
thoughts.
Strong?
You guys are so dumb.
Wow.
No, but like, because what came first? Was it the man or the tree? What came first? Was it the man or the serpent?
I would assume man was last based on what we read.
It's not like God created man and then it's like, let's find some way to test this thing.
No, but
no,
he knew his plan.
God
right?
created the world, puts mankind in the world, and says, okay, you're here, you represent me, and also don't do this and don't do that, right? God's not trying to tempt the man when he puts them in the world. He's just like, this is the world that I made, and you're going to rule over it, and here's how you rule over it. Just don't eat from this tree, right? And all these other creatures and all these other things and everything else that you see, you're supposed to rule over it. That shouldn't really be ruling over you.
Ooh, okay. That's interesting. So it's almost like... Sorry, go ahead.
So I don't really think God put things in the world to tempt people. No, God created the world for himself and then created people to represent himself in the world that he created. And people kind of just failed at it.
I've never heard it phrased like that God made the world for himself.
For his glory, yeah.
Is, I don't want to say that's bad. It's just like, I don't want to say it's jarring. It's just like surprising because I've just never thought about it in that way. And he's like, cool, I made this thing for me. And I'm going to allow you to be here. Come on in. It's almost like, hey, welcome to my home.
And not even like, welcome to my home. It's like, I want you to be like me here, right? Like, I want you just to be in charge of everything and enjoy everything, right? Just make sure you don't destroy it and, follow the rule. At this point, I only have one rule, right? Mm-hmm.
Can I then kind of extrapolate from that then? So if that's that's very interesting. I agree with Franklin that, like, I haven't heard that interpretation before. So two things. What do you then say to that kind of the, I guess, like, more, I don't want to say traditional. I don't know if my interpretation is traditional or not, but what do you say to more the interpretation that, the tree was put there to give man free will? And then, because then that gave man the option to disobey God. And then also, I'm forgetting my other question. So let's start with that one.
I don't think the existence of a tree gives a person free will. I think a person either has free will or they don't, right? Whether or not they can choose. I mean, Adam could have chosen to do anything. Like, he had free will. He just didn't have a rule until God says, don't do this. The existence of a rule doesn't change your ability to act upon your own volition. All it does is actually... So that's actually a cool thing that came up when we did our Romans kind of... our Bible study with Romans with you.
I also remember what you're talking about. Please continue.
Like, the existence of the law only condemns you, right? Can only condemn you. It can't do anything else. What God gave to Adam and Eve wasn't anything but a law, a rule, right? Rules don't give you free will. Mm-hmm. I don't even think that's even relevant, to be honest.
Whoa, hang on. We're getting into some interesting stuff. If I remember correctly, I did not read Plato's The Republic, but I read the Cliff Notes of it. And I remember somebody telling me that in that, I believe it's in that work, that he argues that justice and like having laws ultimately is the ultimate freedom, because then that allows you to do things that wouldn't otherwise be able to be done if laws didn't exist, right? Like, if you had no protection, because laws, they condemn, but they also then protect people that don't break them, right?
I think that's...
Or in theory.
I think that's Machiavelli, James. I think you're talking like the
Really?
I think... I know Machiavelli was big on like, hey, we agreed to have these laws and rules in place because even though they limit me, they also protect me enough to allow me to live my life and be free. Plato.
I agree. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Smart,
yeah.
Yeah.
Not as smart
so maybe
as us.
They're not. Maybe
Exactly.
But wait. I just sorry. One last thing. The other thing I wanted to ask that I just remembered is, and maybe this is on your question list, Franklin, is God also said that if they ate the fruit of the tree, they would die. And so I kind of want to hear.
Hold up on that.
Okay. We'll get to that. Okay.
So a lot of this.
This is so fun.
Everybody calm down. So as I was going, through this, I had all these questions, and then at the end I was typing a question. I was really cooking. I felt like a preacher. I was like, oh, actually, it's really this. Oh, and then this means this, and then this is foretold here. And I was like, so hold on to that, because at the end, I was like, oh, die. That's what that means. So please, let's hold on that.
Okay. So back to Machiavelli and Plato. So Kenneth, do you have a response? Do you have a rebuttal to my claim here?
Just rephrase that once more in one single sentence without having Franklin chime in.
Yeah, so you were saying that laws are only there to condemn, and I'm saying that they're also there to protect, so you can actually possibly achieve more by having laws in a society. Yes, they will condemn, but they can also lead people to achieve greater things. That's kind of it.
Okay.
I think I know what he's
right,
saying.
Like maybe I don't know what you're saying. If you're asking, the actual
I understand what you're saying, James. I think you're saying so what you're saying is that kind of how we just said, the existence of laws, although limiting, grants you the freedom to be able to act and thus the freedom, the ability to utilize your free will. However, I don't think that's applicable in this content because I don't think they are unprotected in the Garden of Eden. They don't need law to protect them to be free. They have that freedom regardless, right?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, even if they weren't told not to eat from these trees, they would still be able to do anything, and they could still do things that, even though God didn't explicitly say are wrong, like, let's say he has all these animals, right? And let's say he got weird with a cow. Did God say, "Thou shalt not be weird with a cow"? No, he just talked about the tree. But I do think that morality probably still existed, and so he could have still done right or wrong things. But actually, and now that I'm talking, the right or wrongness of it, I don't even think matters. So sorry about bringing up that cow, making everyone uncomfortable. It's really weird. Free will just means you could do stuff, not good stuff, not bad stuff, just stuff.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think the existence of a law. So I don't think having laws make you more free. I don't even know if that makes any sense because I think you can always do whatever you want to do.
I get what James is saying in terms of making them more free, in that they protect you to be able to live your life, but that's not applicable in the context of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, and I think what the law does is just kind of, all it does is kind of expose. It can only expose whether or not you're living it rightly or wrongly. Because without law, you could have good and bad things. Mm-hmm. But nothing's really right or wrong. Like, it's bad for a dog to go and like bite some child, right? But like, is the dog morally culpable? Like, no, he doesn't really have laws governing his life. It's just in the wild animal. You know what I'm saying? So it's bad, but not like more like you wouldn't put him on trial and expect him to like give him a case. Like, it's a dog, So at the same time though, but when you do give laws and the laws can be understood, and then those laws are broken, I mean, that's the power that laws have. I don't think laws really control your free will. I would say that. I think laws really more... Without a law, you couldn't say someone is guilty of something. But without a law, you can still have free will.
I think bringing it back... Oh, go ahead. Please, James. I love the fervor.
I don't want to go way out into the weeds here. So, and this is something that I think about. The ultimate form of free will is being able to believe in God or not. Because if you were, I forget the philosopher, he was the guy that wrote that work about the greatest island. No, sorry. That there's no greater thought than God, and therefore God has to exist. I'll look up the name of the philosopher. It's like a very...
It sounds weirdly familiar, but I also have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, the maximally
it's probably
great
familiar.
Being type of thing. There's a concept that if a maximally great being exists, then he must exist. So if you can
probably
conceive
that
of it, then it should actually exist. Something like that.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. Because then there couldn't be anything greater. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but anyway, so some people, disagree with that. I disagree with that. But there's a whole idea like, okay, so if there's a maximally great thing that's like, not a being, would it also have to exist? But ultimately, I think that this is the lesson I learned from Indiana Jones 3, not Raiders, the Lost Ark.
I love the references.
The Last Crusade. The Last Crusade.
Oh yeah,
which was not the Last Crusade because then they made 2 more movies. So in Indiana Jones 3, they do that thing where, spoiler alert for it was a 40-year-old movie, whatever. He has to walk across a bridge that's like invisible, and it's called like the Leap of Faith. And this is gonna sound weird, but that was profound to me as an idea. Not, I'm sure I would have heard it somewhere else if it wasn't for Indiana Jones, where you that is essential to believing to like having faith is like I don't think it's possible to explain to give anybody enough evidence to believe based just on the evidence.
Sure.
I think there has to be that leap of faith. And I think that's the ultimate form of free will. And so that's kind of where I think back to the Garden of Eden, that's like the free will that Adam and Eve have in the garden, and that's what the tree symbolizes. It's like, yeah, you have free will to do whatever you want, like you can make your own decisions, but that's the ultimate decision, is to like break your relationship with God or damage it or whatever.
I see what you're saying. It's like
that's
you have the expression of free will now because there's a law that you can break, or
and I would just be, instead of using the word law, I would say there's the relationship with God, and that's like from my understanding of like committing a grave sin. It's like you're breaking that connection with God,
sure,
and that's like. That's the consequence, and that's ultimately what happens, right, as we read on in the Bible. But yeah, I've talked a lot about this, so I don't know if you guys, if you want to kind of shimmy on a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like there's more rabbit holes to dive down there, which is cool. But yeah, let's keep going. Yeah, so either way, I mean, I thought it was thought provoking that like God had the serpent present, and whether you think he had it present as a way. I know some people don't agree in here about, is it here to tempt us? Is it not here to tempt us? And I think we've put a lot of thought out for the audience to kind of get for themselves. I thought it was really interesting because Adam and Eve, I think, are like, they're a representation of mankind, right? I think going back to the idea of like, I still think we're in poetry here. I don't specifically believe there were two human beings. I'm of the mindset of like, that sounds like a lot of incest to get the earth going.
Well, I mean,
I heard he also have created other people, etc.
No, I mean, like, it doesn't matter what kind of what view you have, theological or atheological. It's going to be a lot of incest, no matter what. Like, even in like evolutionary biology is just the story of incest.
Regardless, my point is, I don't think God would have been like, here's two people, now populate the earth from just you two. Like that doesn't make sense to me, but that's not even the question. I don't think that's a rabbit hole to jump down. But either way, I think they are a metaphor for mankind, right? And I thought it was interesting that the temptation of being asked not to eat from, and I'm just clarifying, there's two trees, correct? There's the tree of good and evil and the tree of life. Okay, so the temptation was because someone said no. It's like if someone says, don't push the big red button, what do we want to do? Now you want to press the big red button. So I thought that was just interesting that there was just this immediate response to of any type of authority, even though they knew God.
Was the temptation that someone said no?
Well, I think it was there. And then I think it took someone being the serpent to exploit it. Because if it wasn't there and the serpent came over and was like, he just doesn't want you to have it or whatever, like, if there was no thought of like, he told me not to eat it, I'm not going to eat it. Like, if they had no desire at all, I don't think it could have been exploited.
So I think it's important to like go into the actual phrasing that the serpent used, like what he actually said, right? So what verse is that? He's like, did he actually say, you shall not eat of the tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Right? And then the serpent kind of like is like, you will surely not die, for God knows when you eat of it God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. I don't know if the temptation here is like, no, you can't do it. Whereas the temptation is to be like God.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. It's like they were kind of fine following that rule until they were given the quote unquote reason, which I don't think that was God's reason.
Yeah.
Also just really quick on this because we talked about Bible translations just a little earlier. Like when you just said the serpent would say, "Oh, because God knows in the day that you eat it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God," right? That's just what the ESV says, but that word is just Elohim. So in other translations, like in like the LEB, the Lexham English Bible, it says, "Then you shall be like the gods," right? Which is plural. which
Love
is saying
that.
like you should.
There's a moment later, even in the
Mhm.
ESV, that had a question about that, where
Huh.
he was he said like, like us, but we can get to
Yeah.
that, when we get there
Yeah.
if we're going through.
Um,
So that's definitely fair,
Yeah,
Natasha. Okay,
I mean,
that's a
like,
good point.
there's a lot of thoughts that I've had on this specific portion on what the temptation actually is.
Mhm.
Like, another like idea or thought that I came across is that like what the devil or the serpent says here is to be like God, right? That's one thing. And another, like, thinking about this for a while, another thing that I kind of was like debating upon is that when we spend more time with God, we become more like God, right? And so in this
Mhm.
context, like Adam and Eve, their purpose is to be good stewards of like the world God has given us and to spend time with God. And what the devil is kind of offering here is a shortcut, right? So like the concept I kind of like one of my pastors kind of said
Mm.
this, where it's like the more time Adam and Eve would have spent with God, they would have become like God. But the serpent is coming here like very early on in the timeline. It's like, oh, you could
Mhm.
become like God by just eating this fruit. And
Mhm.
he's dangling what was actually going to happen, but earlier in the timeline. And so another like kind of temptation is like not being patient, is getting your reward before when you should get your reward.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know
And
that
so that's
reminds me
also a
of?
really cool topic. Yeah.
That reminds me of like the story when Jesus is in the wilderness and he gets tempted by
Mhm.
Satan, and
Yes,
one of the temptations I
exactly.
always found it weird. Like one of the temptations is like,
Yes.
oh, I have all the nations before me, and if
Yeah.
you just
Yes.
like bow and worship me, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Which, in a sense, I'm like, well, Jesus is gonna get that anyway.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
the way in which Jesus would get that would require time, his death,
Mhm.
suffering, whatever. Whereas I guess Satan's just saying, hey, here's a shortcut. Do it this way.
Yeah.
It's the
Mm.
better way.
Yeah, 100%.
Which
And
that's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt,
Go
but
ahead.
like that the surface thought I kind of get from that is that like things that are worth having tend to take hard work, right? And that
Mhm.
could just be a representation of that tends to pop up.
Mhm.
You know, hard work tends to give the reward in the way that it's should be received, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think that's emphasized like throughout the Bible. Like even
Yeah.
the first like we're only 3 chapters in. There's so much work versus rest, like work
Mhm.
versus reward that's
Mhm.
already emphasized with God himself. Like he's working for 6 days and then there's rest. He's given like Adam dominionship over everything. He's like
Mhm.
our first job is to be good stewards of what God has given us. Like that's
Mhm.
work. He's not simply just telling an Adam and Eve to exist, right? There is like a something that's given to us for us to do. And I think
Yeah.
that's emphasized throughout the entire Bible. We're not meant to
Oh,
be
sure.
idle.
But it's interesting to also add on to it that like, and skirting around that work, even if it, and I'll use
Mhm.
air quotes because I don't think you're achieving it in a way that is true, right? But even if you can achieve it by another means, that's not the proper way to do it. And so either it will be false, right? Like,
Mhm.
so it seems like when they eat this fruit, they're not like God. Like
Mhm.
it seems like it was a straight up lie. I know that
Mhm.
obviously they definitely learned some things. They realized they're naked, and we can talk about what that means. But it wasn't true. It was almost like a shallow version. Like, yes, okay, they became more wise, let's say, right? But they didn't become wise like God.
Well, see,
Right.
that's why I think the translation is important, because maybe
Mhm.
he's not saying they're going to be like
God,
God,
but
like
God's
the creator, God.
Yeah.
Maybe he's
Mm.
just saying, he's like, hey, you'll be like the gods, and you'll know both good and evil. Right?
So what does that mean then, like the gods? So like my understanding is there's only one God.
Mhm.
And I understand, like, so does that mean there is a lower tier of gods?
So I don't think the Bible
God.
ever says that there is. So this is something I recently came across,
I
like
think I know
maybe in the
you-
last
oh.
year. But
Natasha, you're whipping out this is what it actually
Gems.
says, and you make me feel very, very silly. But please
No,
continue.
no,
I'm
because
like,
this
I
is-
should have just read the words.
no, don't feel silly. Don't feel silly at all, because I am also, I want to admit this, like, especially Franklin, like I have also never read the Bible in its entirety, and I've only started reading the Bible, I think maybe a year ago. Like, so I've been a Christian for most of my life, and I don't think I've ever had the discipline or like felt the emphasis to read the Bible and like hone in on it.
Yeah.
And I think that once you start doing that, the breadth of knowledge that you just have access to is so like mind-boggling. And I just want to like say that like I'm fairly new to this, but I think when you put in a little bit of elbow grease, there's so much stuff that the Holy Spirit kind of reveals to you, and just even having conversations with other people like is super cool. But one thing I wanted to say is what I think the Bible acknowledges is that God is the God above all gods, and he is the God that was never created. Like before anything was created, there was God, like our God. And
so
I
it
don't
never
think
sorry, keep going, please.
I just want to emphasize this too, because like I don't think the Bible discounts that there are other gods.
But we just may not worship them.
We don't worship them because we worship
Got it.
the God that was never created, the God that always existed from Alpha and
it's so
Omega,
interesting.
beginning and the earth, beginning at the end.
I guess
that God.
It's so fun to think like how many things have I been assuming. Because like, when I hear like, like I said, I haven't read the Bible, but I know the commandments, right? And one of them is, the false idols and etc. So it always sounds like, hey, there are no other gods. You have to only worship me. And even like, oh, we're oh God, what's the word? We only worship one God. There's a word for it.
Monotheistic.
We're not polytheistic. Yeah, we're monotheistic. Thank you.
James, you have way too many croutons. Like you haven't spoken in a while, and I just like
it's wild that it's crouton and immediately water. And, like,
I love it so much.
He's gonna have so much gas later. Just swallowing air. What's it called? But so it's just interesting to think like how many things am I totally assuming? Because I just assumed, so there is only one God, not. Hey, it doesn't matter if there are or are not other gods. The one that you worship is this one.
Yeah.
The one above all, the one who is not created, right?
Yeah.
And then and it's also important to know like that term, maybe gods is just a poor translation because we don't really have a word like that properly in English. Because I mean that word is also like, for example, when the prophet Samuel dies, but then what's his name? King Saul goes and sees him in some sort of vision or whatever. They call him an Elohim, right? And that's the same word that gets translated as God, but in that instance, it gets translated to spirit or whatever, ghost.
Interesting.
Right? So it's because we don't really, I think English doesn't have a proper word for it, so we just use God with a little g because it's the closest.
Yeah.
But that same word is the same word to use for ghosts in the Bible, used for spirits,
judges,
for whatever.
There are so many
interesting.
examples of the way that Elohim, and I think this maybe like circles back to my personal like what I've been like focusing on, which is like the names of God, because there's something like Elohim as a phrase that we refer to God, but there's also something like Yahweh, and no one else in the Bible is referred to as Yahweh other than our God. And I think that there's like so much beauty in how God reveals certain names and how it's used throughout the Bible to kind of emphasize who he is in context of like the intellectual ability we have to understand versus like who he is, like who he always is and who he will be for all of time, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. I like that. That's like I said, it keeps showing me how much I was assuming, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting, even in, like you just said, Natasha, the way he's presenting himself. And okay, I have to stew on that. That's going to come back, I'm sure, in future episodes. But like, that's such a different understanding.
Something I wanted
quick
to kind
anecdote.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Natasha. Just quick anecdote. I actually met somebody I used to work with years ago. Didn't know anything about Christianity. Didn't know anything about, even like were culturally Jewish, but like, their family wasn't practicing or anything. And it was fascinating. They were telling me the first time they saw a picture of Jesus, like a painting of Jesus, at like a friend of a friend's house, and they were like, "Who's that?" Like they had no exposure to religion at all, and it was just very interesting to kind of hear their perceptions of what it was without having kind of like the mindset that we have, like where we had been at least exposed to it early in our lives. But anyway, so. That is something I try to keep in mind when reading the Bible, being like, how much of this is my preconceived notion versus how much of this is am I really reflecting on it, like, from what the words themselves.
That's true.
One thing I wanted to kind of highlight is kind of what Eve says in response to the serpent, where she's like, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I mean, I don't know if you necessarily have noticed it while you were reading, but does God ever say that you're not allowed to touch it?
No.
Yeah, does he even refer to it before this chat? I don't even think
He
the
does.
In
trees
So
chapter
refer
he'll-
2,
to,
he
is it?
referred to it. Chapter 2,
Yeah.
verse 16. So he said, so God said, you may eat of every tree in the garden, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, don't eat, because in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die.
Yeah.
That's it.
He doesn't say anything about touching. And
it's
also,
like if you touch it, you die. Like, he never said
exactly.
that.
And also
that's
the
interesting.
commandment, I mean, we might get into this later, but the commandment's given to Adam, not to Eve. Right? Eve doesn't even exist when the commandment's initially given. It's given to Adam, and then Eve is created. And then between there's some sort of finagling that happens that Eve has the understanding that even if you touch it, you die.
Yeah,
right? And so there's some sort of like lost in translation there. And I wonder, like, again, this is just me, like, human thinking about this. Like, I wonder if the serpent tells Eve this, like, you're fine, you're okay, you can have it and nothing will happen. And then she takes it in her hand and she doesn't die. And she's like, oh, like, I took it in my hand, I didn't die. So maybe you're right. Maybe I can eat it and it'll be fine.
Well, here's the thing. It's two things. There's a part of me wants to go, it's just like, they said it's slightly different this time.
Yeah.
Like, I so easily want to just discount that. But,
Sure.
like, I'm learning that, like, no, we're diving into every specifically crafted sentence.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like there's a wasted word in here, right? Which
Especially,
will be interesting
yeah.
when we get to the part where it's like, and this guy's the son of this guy, and the son of this guy.
Oh,
and
I
we gotta
hate those
read it.
parts.
And we have to
Yeah,
have an
no.
episode on it.
Oh my God.
And I don't know what we're gonna talk about. So there's a part of me that wants to discount it. But going to your point there, Natasha, the idea of like, oh, she picks it up and she goes, oh, I didn't die.
Yeah.
Maybe the serpent's correct. But I would also say, and then they take a bite and they don't die.
Yeah.
So what does die mean here?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Which goes back to, James, for those of you listening, James is motioning with his hands. That is what he's been referencing this entire time.
Well, I mean, I don't know. But also, when did God say you would die?
God
Well,
said, oh yeah, go ahead. Oh,
Fair.
like when concept of time.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
says what? Like he says
That's an interesting thing.
Sure.
in the
Yeah, go
day
ahead.
you eat of it, you'll surely die. And we already had so many talks
Questions about
does
what
the day
day
even
means.
means.
Yeah.
Sure.
Back
Well,
in the other one.
I think it's fair to even ask, like, what does die mean? Like, I have this, and this is a very loose, like, this is not a very well thought out thing yet. This is like just ideas that have been popping in my head that the Garden of Eden is heaven on earth. Like, I think I said one episode, like, it's like heaven and earth were together, and then now heaven and earth are apart, and then eventually there will be a new heaven and new earth, and God's kingdom will be on earth, like it'll be together again, right? And so there's a part of me that thinks like, later on they are now kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So it'll, like, in my head it's like they're now kicked out of heaven, and then there's this cherubim that is defending the entrance, right? So nobody's allowed back in. And so I'm curious if it's like that's the death. You are now not in here anymore. You now have to suffer, right? Your life has so much suffering now that you have to go through, and that's the death, is that you're not here anymore. And so later on, I know I'm jumping ahead, but when, Natasha, you've kind of made me keep in my head, like, keep thinking Jesus, even though we're Old Testament, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where we're going. It's like, okay, cool. Jesus is going to now fix that. And he's going, like, from my understanding, nobody really went to heaven until Jesus reopened that gate, because we say Jesus defeated death, right? And, you could make that argument of like, well, I know people who die, so what do you mean he defeated death? And it's like, okay, well, now there's eternal life after the death that happens here. So death with a capital D, if we're going to keep talking Plato, is now defeated, right? So here, when they say that you will die, it's now that you don't have this eternal life in the Garden of Eden right now, where there is no suffering. You now are in this world where there is suffering, and you will die here, and you are not saved until Jesus changes that.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Kenneth just nod as if my idea was interesting.
No. I think. Well,
I didn't.
For all the listeners, Kenneth just nodded.
Yes, I nodded
You nodded.
in affirmation of your idea, because I do agree with that. Like, what the original purpose was of creation was to spend eternity with God, and like through the fall, that is no longer a reality. So I agree with you that death in this sense is absence of God or being away from God or not having
Which,
God's presence.
you know, it's interesting because like there's a part of me when you say it like that, I guess because of our human existence, right? There's a part of me that goes, oh, so we didn't really mean death.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's actually a way worse death.
100%.
You know what I mean? But it's hard to conceptualize that because here I'm like, the end of the life that I understand
Mhm.
is a very scary death.
Mhm.
But to now think like, and then after that, there's nothing for you now because of the real death,
Mhm.
right? Like death has power over you now, whereas it didn't have power over you before. You know, maybe they would have lived forever in the Garden of Eden, maybe not, and they would have gone somewhere else after little D died, right?
Mhm.
But I find that super interesting if you think of like, you know, like I said, like heaven and earth being together, separating because of this, right?
Yeah.
Like now, if we're taking Adam and Eve as a representation of mankind is now no longer in this garden. You have to, you know, they talk about, I mean, where's the verse? When do they start talking about dust? I know I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, you're jumping
So-
ahead.
Dust to dust.
Yeah, so 19, where he says, by the
ashes
sweat
to
of
ashes.
19 and by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So like that makes me think like the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. Like you're gonna suffer just to survive. Like eating bread to me sounds like you're just to be able to sustain yourself. You're gonna suffer and work just to survive, where everything was given to you. You could eat from all of these trees except for those two. And you're going to do that your entire life until you die because you are just mere dust.
Mhm.
Like it's like, and just remember like you, that this is all you were. And I made you greater and you turned away from me. And so fine, you get to be that again.
Mhm.
You know, it's very intense, which
Yeah.
I think is really like I think I said in another episode, like I used to not fear God, and it's like, sure.
Yeah, I know. but, like,
He's very powerful.
Yeah. No, for sure.
with that said,
So-
go ahead, James.
Yeah, just a quick note on that too. So we talked about, I believe it was in the last episode, how the heaven, the idea of heaven doesn't necessarily have to be a separate place from Earth.
Sure.
It's just that like Earth could be, you know, in the future or in some form, right? Could be heaven. So is that what you guys think of as the Garden of Eden? It was like Earth before original sin?
Yes. And I think that's
and
like,
then, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I think that's even going back to talking about the rivers. You know, it's funny. We've had you guys on as a pair for a little while. We will have a rotating panel of guests at some point.
I know.
No,
There
it's
will be
okay. I
more.
like James.
He's
Thank you too, Natasha. Thank you.
But that's like when they talked about the four rivers, two of which we know about, two of which we didn't. So it's like, here's the heaven on earth that was kind of in Mesopotamia area,
Mhm.
and now all of a sudden it's not. You know what I mean? So I do think it was something that was here. Well, I don't even want to say that was here because was Earth there, but either way they were together,
Mhm.
and now I believe they're apart. That's kind of the understanding that I've come through as we've been scratching the surface. You know?
Yeah.
Here's a thought I had though. I mean, all this talk, all this things going on. What was Adam doing? Like, I'm just so confused because he's just
Like, where was
Not
he?
paying
completely
attention.
absent from the
Yeah.
entire narrative.
Not paying attention.
Yeah.
Imagine.
And then he just shows up just to do the wrong thing. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just don't
Ken
understand.
James, you guys are married men. Imagine you turn to your wife and you go, "You've been hanging out with what? A snake?" You know what I mean? Like for how
He told
long?
you to eat this? All right.
Oh, haven't been-
Just
like that's
join
like,
in, what?
totally not paying attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your wife's been
That's
hanging out with
like-
a snake.
just-
What are you
Just
doing?
completely useless. I feel like at that point, just so sad.
But you know, to be fair,
At least wanted some dialogue. Like this.
well, yeah. But in the Garden of Eden, like you're not worried about your wife.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're in the Garden of Eden.
Fair.
You know?
Fair.
Yeah.
He had no reason to be worried about her.
Of course, you know, which
Yeah.
I think does go back to, I know you said like, you know, imagine like God has created this world for himself and has invited you in to like also live there with him and have you have ownership over it too. So that's like saying like, hey guys, so like this is my house, but you know, like Natasha, move in with me. Like you're going to move in and come on in. What's mine? Mi casa es su casa, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I go, just do me a favor. And I do actually have a favorite spoon. I got it from a cereal box a long time ago. So imagine I was like, just please don't use my spoon. I don't
Yeah.
use it. I literally, it's in my home. This is my spoon.
Yeah.
I love that spoon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was like, you know, Natasha, please don't use my spoon.
Yeah.
But weirdly, there was also a sign above it that said, that spoon's the best spoon, right? So the sign above it to me is the serpent. So even though I do think it's important to kind of say like, even though, yeah, Adam, you had nothing to worry about, God did create things to be worried about within his home. Like, I don't think, I know there's some people here that think, I think specifically Kenneth, maybe you also, Natasha, which I'm not pointing you out, I'm just more directing.
You
the question
literally were
towards you.
pointing.
No, I wasn't.
Literally
Oh, so
pointing
easy
to
just to lie when we don't have a visual aspect. But I think I know you guys kind of think that he didn't put that there to tempt Adam and Eve, but how could he not know that is something that would tempt them? You know what I mean? So I'm not saying we have to dive into that now. I think it's just worth thinking about, like, in this perfect world where it's like, Adam, you had nothing to worry about. It's like, no, God did actually put things in here for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the Bible ever said that he had nothing to worry about. I think
it didn't say he did or didn't.
Yeah, God just makes this amazing, fascinating, magical world, basically. I mean, anyone, honestly, if I grew up in a different time period and I saw like the aurora or I saw a spring or a mountain, I'm going to think this is a magical world, right?
Yeah.
So God creates this amazing, magical world and says, okay, you're in it and enjoy it. You have dominion over everything. Just don't do one thing. That doesn't mean there isn't dangerous and crazy beasts twice, 10, 100
but I
times
do
the
think
size
it's
of
worth
you.
saying
But
the presence of those dangers mean that God, if
God knew you're gonna get into those.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like there's a big question, and I don't think we should dive into this now because we will get totally off topic. But the idea of like God knows everything that's going to happen? Question mark. But so is everything predetermined? Question mark. Like that. Obviously, there's a distance there that we definitely should get into at some point. But that's why I look at it and I go, when God created the serpent, He knew the serpent not only would tempt Adam and Eve, but would successfully tempt Adam and Eve. I would assume.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, because of that, God has a certain level of responsibility over his creations, which I'm pretty sure he knew that from the beginning and had a plan for that from the beginning.
Sure. I guess I'm just saying though, like, it's interesting, and I'm not saying we're going to figure it out. Odds are we won't, but I think it's interesting to think like, okay, why did he put that there? You know, like I know James, you kind of tried to figure it out before, like, oh, well, that is what made the free will actually free will. Obviously, I don't think
the
we
problem
agreed on
is that question betrays the thought that humanity is the point.
Yeah, I think it's
I think it does, because you're saying, well, why does God
betray
put that
it
there? Well, because I say betray because I feel like that's kind of your underlying premise behind the question. Because why would you ask that, right?
Well, I think there is. I don't want to say humanity is the point, but I assume there is a point to it.
Yeah, the point of humanity is to represent God on Earth. Right, I think that's it. I don't think that God created the world primarily for humanity, right? Because if he did, there's things he wouldn't have done in the world. But I do think that God created the world knowing that humanity would fail in some sort of way and has some plans to handle it. But I also think there's some things that God created that it's not for him to limit his creation on our behalf.
Yes.
It's kind of for us to operate under him within the world that he created, right? It's not really about what's good or bad for us. It's us coming and becoming something that can actually rule this world.
It's kind of like, you know how, Franklin, you're talking about the spoon and how, like, the spoon,
capital T, capital S,
spoon, right? Like, if I'm visiting or I'm hanging out, like, the spoon has nothing to do with me. Like, in actuality, I'm applying meaning to the spoon, right? Like how I'm thinking about how I'm evaluating what you're saying, right? In actuality, the spoon probably has nothing to do with me. But because, like, we're human beings and, like, in the same way...
We're egocentric and not in a negative way,
and
but we have egos, right?
That Kenneth is kind of getting at. Like, we are not the main characters in this story. Like, God's life does not revolve around us. God doesn't revolve around us. It's the opposite. And I think when we're approaching like the story with that mindset that we're like the main characters, like we ask kind of the wrong questions. And maybe that's what Kenneth is getting at. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth.
I do see what you're saying, but I don't think that removes the idea that, like I said, we're not the point, but there is a point. And I would also argue, because I see what you said, Kenneth, about like what our point is or our purpose here. But I also would imagine and that he has an end goal for us. Maybe
Yes.
we are not relevant to the end goal.
Mhm.
Yes.
Maybe we are but a small part. But I would imagine, okay, so there's a means to our ends, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And so that's why when these hurdles are in the way, I go, okay, so why that hurdle?
Yeah.
And is kind of what I'm saying.
No, and I sometimes like this question of that you're asking, like, why is the tree there in the first place? Like, it's a very hard question, and maybe this is like putting a band-aid on a cut that's like profusely bleeding. Like, I don't know, but like sometimes with these questions where I'm really struggling, I try to go back to what I understand to be the character of God. And in this scenario, I kind of think about it like God the Father, and like with children, when you're trying to give them like, don't touch this, don't do this, it's all for their protection. Right?
Sure.
It's never because like you're like, I'm trying to kind of like test you. I'm trying to like.
But I'm not. The way you phrase it was, why did he? I'm not curious why he put the trees there.
Sure.
I'm curious why he put the serpent there. And I'm also, I want to put out there that like my mindset is like, I'm not like, we have to figure this out right now. And my mindset is like, maybe this is going to be answered later on.
Well,
You know what I mean? Hold on, before you get there, Kenneth, because like I do think this question continues to come up every time something bad happens to humanity. It's like, especially one that we didn't bring upon ourselves, because I do think the allowance of free will allows us to bring it upon ourselves. But anytime where he puts us in a situation, right, I look at it and I go, okay, so why?
So this is, I think this is important because, and maybe this will get, because we're talking about original sin.
Sure.
That's a great question, right?
Okay, yeah.
You can only tempt somebody if they already have the desire within themselves to begin with.
Well, that's what I said at the beginning. And then Natasha said, look at the text, idiot, and embarrassed me in front of all our listeners.
I guess I'm not saying, that wasn't me saying that the temptation didn't exist. It's like what we're being tempted with, right? Because you were saying that it's like God saying you can't do something. But I don't think that was the temptation. I think the temptation was, can we become like God? And then the other question of like, why did there's some thoughts that I'm like might not come across right. I'm trying to flesh out. Like, one, the question of why did the serpent exist in the first place? I kind of think that if it weren't the serpent, it would have been something else, right?
Yeah,
like I think that
so.
whole like temptation would have even come about between Adam and Eve, because once you have free will, you have this like, you have the decision to listen or not listen, right? Like that.
Yes.
That will always be there. Kind of like what Kenneth was saying, when you have a law, you're always kind of going to fall short if you have free will. That's one thing. The second thing is like, not to equate it, maybe this is like a little left field, but there's like this thought that has come up in like more Christian circles of like whether or not, if you knew that like Hitler would grow up to do what Hitler did,
kill the baby?
You kill Hitler as a baby, right? So I don't know. I hate posing this question. I hate this question, but it's kind of that thought, and I feel
I
like
love that question.
God has that question. I don't know how you guys would answer it, but like I would answer it like, of course I'm not going to kill a baby because a baby hasn't done anything yet.
Well, because let me respond to that, because I think that's super interesting that you bring that up. First of all, I love when people go, if I knew that baby was going to be Hitler, of course I'd kill the baby. And people's response is always, so how would you do it? And I think that is like a way harder question than are you or are you not going to kill this baby? Yeah, there's one where it's like, punch it real hard, it's just a baby. But I totally see what you're saying. I think there is, I guess I'm saying like, yes, you could say that. If it's like, hey, let's eliminate that suffering, right? So like, would you not kill this baby? I look at it and I'm asking the question not because I'm going, God, why would you do this to us? I'm asking the question because I'm going, so obviously he's doing it for a reason. So I'm curious as to why. Like, I'm not going, God, why'd you put that serpent there to tempt us? Like, why would you do that? I'm going, okay, so he put it there and he knew it was going to tempt us. We already had free will, whether the serpent was there or not, so why did he bring that temptation in? Why did he enhance? Why did he put us in the situation?
Well, and again, I don't. Because later on the Bible says, God
I'm sorry. I just want to preface, because I want to make sure I'm clear. I don't think that's a bad thing because it's God's plan. So I do think it's good. I'm just curious. Like, I wonder what that reason would be.
Yeah,
exactly. What is he trying to accomplish by doing that?
So I think later on in the Bible it says, God does not tempt anyone to evil, right? but people are tempted when they're dragged around by their own desires, right? And I don't think it's kind of like what Natasha was saying. It was kind of going to be inevitable for a being that has free will to eventually choose to do what is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That is inevitable. Like the only person who's able to ever not do that
anything wrong
was literally God himself.
But you know what's interesting is I'm curious why the story didn't go.
So hold on. So I think the question, and I guess I would push back. I would agree with you, but I would push the question back even further, right? So the question isn't about why did God have the tree in there. But I also don't think the question is why did God have the serpent in there. I think the question really is why did God create even humanity? Because
fair question.
Yeah, because if you're going to create something that has free will, then it's going to freely choose something that you didn't want it to do. That's probably wrong, right? And
I do think that's a different. I think that's a different question though, because I think like let's say the story went, okay, because we talked about spending time with God and you will one day become like God, right? And let's say Adam and Eve were sitting there going like, like that's the tree of good and evil and of an eternal life, like. God understands good and evil, and God has eternal life, and they kind of like sussed out themselves. We could take this shortcut. It's me. Like then I would go, oh, that's a representation that man is always tempted to cut the corners and not do the good work and etc. So whatever, we could talk about that, but it's not that. It's specifically that we are tempted by something God has created in this world. So I just think it's like I said, it's just I think I agree that there's a question of like why allow beings that have the capability to be tempted and have free will, etc. It's a good question, but it's just interesting that the temptation isn't like it's. You could say that it is deep innate in ourselves, but there's specifically a character who is pulling that out of you.
I mean, I think there is an instigation, but I still wouldn't take the instigation as the cause. Because if you look at it, after the instigation happened, after the serpent's like, well, did God really say this? Well, that's probably not going to happen. You're not going to die, right? Then, in verse 6, then the woman saw that the tree was good for food. So she's like, Then she goes on her own, sees the fruit tree was good for food, sees that it looks good, right? I mean, it looks good to eat. And, maybe, and she saw that the tree was desired to make one wise, whatever that means, right? And then she took it and she ate it and then she gave it to her husband, right? Which I don't know the time frame there.
Mm-hmm. Everyone always,
but I like that it says
everyone makes it sound like
husband who
Adam
was
takes
with
the first
her.
bite.
No, Adam doesn't.
No,
take
Adam
the first
doesn't
bite.
take the first bite. Eve takes the first.
So I don't know the time frame there because then it says because she sees it and she gives it to her husband who's with her. Which I'm like, if the time frame is like immediate, then that means Adam was really a loser because he was there the whole time.
He was just like letting it happen.
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, maybe there's like time periods between all these like little events and these sentences, but it doesn't seem like the serpent is like giving her the fruit or anything like that. It's just saying like, oh, did God really say this? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right?
So could we argue then maybe that like then the serpent is just so going back to the idea of like Satan and the devil and the serpent, all the many names, right? That the serpent is more a representation of the temptation rather than, I guess I'm taking the serpent as like God put the serpent in the world, where I should be taking it as like the serpent is God creating a being with temptation. It's like, here's like, does that make sense? It's more of like it's almost like the serpent is a characterized representation of man's temptation rather than a serpent in the world that is talking to Adam.
Maybe that's a better way. It's more of a personified kind of understanding of
another great word. Gosh,
of which I think that's kind of where I lean towards, especially in just this first part of Genesis, where I think it's very anthropomorphic and it's very
great word.
Mystical or mythical, right? It's mythical history.
Where I was taking the serpents very literally, despite me constantly saying I'm taking this as
right? I mean, and I think the serpent kind of does represent that, though. The serpent does represent just an enemy that I think the serpent does represent an enemy because, like, what motives does the serpent have to tell Eve to eat it?
Sure.
Serpent is like,
But isn't your inner temptation, isn't that you can characterize that as an enemy, you know what I mean? Like, and maybe to explain this to people, we're personifying it.
Which,
right? Like
in the next chapter, it is actually personified as an enemy. internal.
I like how you
But-
can foreshadow for me because I don't know what's happening in the next chapter.
Oh, really? To be
I
honest.
love it.
Yeah, next time on Dragon Ball Z.
What do you guys think
I would-
about? Oh, sorry.
Can
go
I
ahead,
ask
James.
one? Can I just do one quick follow up here?
No.
I would also think that
Everyone's always
if you think of it
thinking
from the viewpoint of us now reading this, so the viewpoint of the reader, not like putting yourself in the story, but
Mhm.
reading it, years and years after it was written. I think it fundamentally, though, just is telling us something about human nature, right? And I think that's what you were basically saying before, which is like it inevitably would have happened if you give people free will, you give them, in this type of situation, it's inevitable. And I think that that's kind of the point, like, at least from like the reader's like lessons that you could learn from this is that it's like nobody's perfect, and like this represents Adam and Eve were representing all of humanity at that time, effectively. And so that's why I think putting yourself, almost in the present moment, reading it as as events of the past or a story or whatever. Yeah. So I think that, but I definitely agree with what you guys are saying about the temptation and that's kind of the role that the serpent was playing. But anyway.
Can I? Go ahead, please. No.
I was going to say I'm going to change the subject. I don't know if you're going to.
Oh, I was going to as well. I was just going to say, because I know that we have a hard stop for today.
It's
so
okay.
I
We
was going
can
to
keep going if we want.
It's no longer a hard stop.
I
It's a
don't know,
soft stop.
it's a soft
those.
stop. It's how James rolls through stop signs.
Yeah.
Why me?
You look like the kind of guy, you don't stop fully. You
I
don't
know.
want to.
He saw the red
I
shirt.
stop for a full 3 seconds.
You don't want to.
I love
3.
it.
I wait until somebody honks at me, and then I find it.
If James pulls up to a stop sign, there's no one there to honk. Does he leave? He's up there.
You just
I've
stay
been
there
there for a
forever.
long time.
What I was gonna ask is like, I was also going to change the subject. I don't know if you were going here, Kenneth, but like, so what's wrong with being naked here? What does that mean?
Ooh, I wasn't, but that was kind of close, right? Because it's getting to like the aftermath, right? But yeah, so they see. I'm trying to figure out what's verse is that. Oh, then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. So already, and this is now wild, in my theistic evolutionary mind, which is, now I'm not saying is biblical or not, it's just, how I think about things sometimes. I think that's the point where they get away from being a little bit more animalistic and a little bit
they
more
lose their
modern.
fur?
What?
Like they lost their fur?
No.
Kind of a thing, and
no.
like now they have to
No, I'm
adapt
not
and-
saying they lost their fur. I'm saying like, what other
People are
creatures?
gonna
like-
make fun of me, man.
Kenneth
Perform,
was
you're gonna be
literally like, he
Franklin's
did
an
a double
idiot.
take. You guys can't see this. He was like, what?
Okay. No. I'm saying like, all right, what animal do you know wears clothes besides the ones that people put on their little poodles, right? No, none
Mhm.
that I know of. And I think they're coming from this point of pure natural, like, I was just created, I'm free. The way God makes things, the way you
Sure.
come into the world, to all of a sudden, oh, now I have this deeper understanding of like what I actually am and what I'm actually not. They start to, to the credit of the serpent, they start to view themselves not as just another form of beast of the field that is superior to all the other beasts of the field. They start to see themselves as something transcendent, and they need to cover up
I didn't think about
their
that.
physical bodies.
I didn't think about
They
that
need
point.
to, like, because that's not a natural thing to want to do.
Like, they
to wear
themselves
clothes.
are differentiating, like, them as Adam and Eve from the rest of God's creations. Like, this is their first step of being like, we're going to clothe ourselves because we're different than all the other animals.
Oh, it seemed more like we're ashamed type.
I mean,
of,
yes, that too.
Yeah, I mean,
but
they
like,
would do
why
that because
aren't
they're
the
ashamed,
other
but why
like
would,
why isn't it the thought of being like, oh, so all of the animals, all of God's creations are not clothed?
ashamed?
Like, why
we have
wasn't
to make
that the
loincloths
thought?
for all the animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, do animals think that they're ashamed? No, they don't even have.
How does a
that
dog
thought.
wear its loincloth? One in the front and the back, or just the one in the back? How would a dog wear pants? No, I guess because even how with what you guys are saying, my thought was like, so because they ate from, I feel so silly double checking. So obviously not eternal life. They ate from the tree of
Knowledge
good
of
and
good and
evil,
evil.
of knowledge of good and evil, right?
Yeah.
I guess in my head, the knowledge part kind of made me think like, so they now understand all of their shortcomings,
Mm.
or and so it's like naked is like you're now it's like you have this insecurity about you. There's a better word, like you're vulnerable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I'm naked, I'm vulnerable,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and so now I need to cover up. So it's like they have that understanding now.
Mhm.
So almost like now that they have this greater understanding, I think now in comparison to God, where
Mhm.
especially if they're trying to be like God, they all of a sudden go, "Oh my gosh, like I am so far
Mhm.
from Him, and it's embarrassing, and I need to clothe myself." And then
Mhm.
when He comes through, not
Yeah.
only because they did the wrong thing, but they're like, "We gotta hide, we can't face Him,"
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like they're embarrassed of what they are because
But
of how not close to Him they are.
they didn't, just in order, they didn't do that. They didn't clothe themselves because they heard God was coming. They thought about God and then they wanted to like not be naked
Well,
anymore.
but no, I mean, but
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I just
Mhm.
think that the fact that they were like, they realized what they are,
Mhm.
and they were insecure about that, and it was I'm vulnerable, and I
That is
I
true,
need to
though. He
cover
did
all
say
that
that.
up.
Mhm.
I think that happened first, and then the hiding specifically is like, even though I'm covered up, I can't be in His presence.
Mhm.
We're out of here.
Mhm.
We are so below Him.
Mhm.
I think they
Mhm.
now have that understanding, a lot more deeply now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you guys think about, like, I guess starting from verse 8 and on, when God actually kind of comes in? They heard the sound. They heard the sound of
Make
the
fun
Lord
of
God
Kenneth now.
walking in the garden in the
day,
cool of the
yeah.
day. First of all, this just sounds so nice. Sometimes in
Yeah.
the evening when I go outside, I'm like, the cool of the day.
Yeah.
But and the
Kenneth looks outside and
man
goes,
and his
Genesis
wife
3:8.
hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the
Mhm.
garden. And the Lord God called to the man and said, "Where are you?" What do you guys think about, I guess, that entire paragraph? I guess that and whatever comes after that entire exchange.
Yeah, go ahead. James, did you want to go?
Natasha,
so
it's all
many
you.
so many thoughts about this. And I'm sure like depending you guys have read through this a handful of times. But I think what's interesting is like the dichotomy between guilt and shame here. Like they're feeling shame and not guilt. And this is more like a therapist differentiation that one of my friends has kind of honed in on for me, where shame is something that you know that you've done something wrong and you feel helpless or less than, whereas guilt is something where you've done something wrong but you know you can be better. So like if you kind of, I don't know, I'm a student right now. So if I failed a test and I felt shame, right? That would be something
Mhm.
that I hid. That would be something that I didn't talk about. That is something that I didn't want to acknowledge because it's something that I'm using to like diminish myself, make me less than a person. Whereas if I studied and then I failed and I feel guilt where I'm like, I could have done better. This is something I could have done better. There's a shift in how we perceive that life event of being like, okay, this is what I went through. This is what I'm learning from it. This is how I'm going to move forward. And there's like this openness and transparency that comes with guilt that doesn't come with shame. And that's clearly, I think, evident here where Adam and Eve hide, where they're feeling shame and they're hiding what they've already done and they're running from it versus being
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm guilty. I've done something wrong. Like God is our Father. God is someone we could run towards instead of running away from. So that's one thing. The second thing that I think is super important is how good our God is, even in the scenario where Adam and Eve has done something that he like clearly didn't want them to do, that he is still pursuing them, that he is the one that's asking, where are you? And he doesn't ask like once. He's continuously asking them questions. Like he's like, where are you? Adam replies, who told you? Like Adam replies, what is it that you've done? Like he's constantly, I feel like constantly reaching out to Adam to kind of shift the mentality from shame to guilt, to be like, come towards me, have a relationship with me, come talk to me. Like, and there's that constant pursuit that I think is so beautiful, that outlines, like that sets up what our relationship with God is always going to be. That where when we're feeling guilty or when we're feeling shame is not, I don't think shame is how God works towards
Mhm.
us. Like he never wants us to feel like we're less than
like less than who we are. Like it's I think a dichotomy and something that we struggle with throughout our life is feeling shame versus guilt. And feeling shame is making ourselves more important than we are, and feeling guilt is being like, hey, I've done something wrong, but you are more important. You are bigger than the wrongs that I've done. And so I can run towards you. And so in these I don't know, 8-10 verses, I don't know how many verses there are, I feel like it sets up like our entire, like the entire progress of our relationship with God when we do something wrong. Like we do something wrong, we run away, God pursues us. He tells us to turn towards him, and he continuously pursues us until we like step towards him and have a conversation with him and kind of acknowledge what we've done.
You know, it's
Sorry, that was a
interesting.
mouthful.
I'm sorry. Can't go for it.
No, I was like, that's why I really like this God's first question. Like, this is the first thing he's like, what said in a while. But he just says, where are you?
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, I feel like that's the coolest thing to ask at that point. Because I mean, they've really done something really bad. And, you know, God's walking around in the cool of the day. He knows everything. He knows what's going on.
Exactly.
That's what's in my head.
And he
I was
just
like, you know
calls
where
to
they
them
are.
and says, where are you? And then Adam is like, well, I was naked. I hid myself. And he's like, ooh, and that's it. That's all Adam says.
Exactly.
So then God's like, well, who told you were naked? Like, did you eat of the tree that I told you not to eat? Like, he's like prying it out of him.
But I think you make a good point, Ken, where it's like, and going off on what Natasha said, he knows the answers to all of these things.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, my daughter can't speak, and, you know, obviously we can't have these dialogues, but I think of like, you know, even seeing other good fathers, you know, they come down and they go like, what did you do? Why did you do that? You know, did someone tell you should do that? And they usually, you know, they knew what happened, but they're putting you in a situation like a good father does, like a good teacher does, right? They're putting you within a situation where now you can kind of discern and have ownership over the understanding of the, you know, that I shouldn't be shameful about this, going off of what you said, Natasha, that I should feel guilty and that I know I could do better. And I'm going to do better next time. And, you know, because I think that's important too, is like, not only do I know I could do better, but okay, next time I will try to do that.
I also like, Adam is really trash, to be honest. Just because he's like, once God's like, all right, who told you to be naked? What did you do? Adam's like, well, the woman that you gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit. And I'm like, well,
but he's not wrong.
Honest,
but he's not wrong.
No. Because remember, we went back. God gave Adam all these other animals. He was like, nah, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Then God finally like, okay, let me take something out from your ribs. Does this work? And then Adam was like, yes, this finally at last, I choose this. This is the thing.
And then Adam said, I'm wrong. You gave me this thing that really messed everything up.
And then immediately Adam's like, nope, it wasn't me. It was you, this woman. I'm like,
think of how happy you are when you get married, and then a year later you're like, let him like.
I know, right?
But I also think it's important here. Like, he's like, the woman who you gave me told me to do this, and
so
then
like, is it God's fault now?
What was that?
So is it God's fault?
Yeah. So are you one trying to blame God, and two, I'm like, but like God directly told you not to do something. Like, sure, like if the woman did it, like I wonder how different life would be.
Well, I mean, like, according to Franklin, I mean, it is God's fault, because why did God even create the serpent in the first place, right?
I don't want to say it's God's.
Yeah.
Well, hold up. I don't think it's God's fault, but I do think it's interesting to be like, hey, I'm going to put you in a situation where your job's getting a little bit harder now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean God did it to you. Like, you know, he didn't, like here, right? So he's tempting Adam and Eve, but he's not making the decision for them.
Yeah.
But he is putting more temptation there. He's upping the difficulty.
I think, you know, this might kind of like branch us back, or like might change the topic a little bit, and we could come back to this. But something I wanted to say earlier is, I wonder if we've been talking a lot about like what our purpose is, and maybe we touched upon it before, Kenneth. I think you said like our purpose is to glorify God, right? And I also echo that same sentiment, where I think all of God's creations is created as a testament to who God is and meant to glorify God. But I think with humans, there is also a desire from God to be loved, right? I don't think God necessarily, I'm extrapolating a lot here and putting a lot of thoughts into God's mind, but I don't think God necessarily cares if like the plants or like animals love him, right? But I think God cares whether or not we have a relationship with them. And the root of that, I think, is love and care. And I don't think you can have love without having free will, first of all, and without it being like, you can't have love decided for you. That I think that's the whole point of free will. And I think that's what the ultimate goal is in the story and why it's set up the way that it is. Franklin, you keep asking, like, why this? Like, why did all of this have to come to pass for this to happen? I think it's because, or I'm trying to have faith that God let this happen the way that it did, because otherwise true love would not be able to be accomplished.
But that sounds just a little bit, and I'm only saying this because I'm saying this in the pursuit of like trying to understand things, and I don't think I'm going to hurt God's feelings, because I obviously don't mean it negatively.
God's bigger than you're good.
Real big.
Huge.
But that sounds like needy and narcissistic, right? And I think I don't think God is needy and or narcissistic, right? So I just think I don't know how much deeper we can get into that now, just in terms of what we know and what we're talking about.
The story.
Yeah, but I think it's like worth saying, like, that at least sounds to me like, all right, God created something that he's like, all right, I love you, and I really want you to love me too, please. And I'm gonna make sure that I put you in a situation where, so that I know that you really chose to love me. That you don't love me because I made you, because I know I could, but I want to make sure that you really like it. That just feels very like
No, I can. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna move it a little further along to the next part, but I kind of wanted to do that because it ends with God asking the woman, like, what did you do? And the woman saying, the servant deceived me. And then God gets into like punishments, right? Two things I noticed though is God doesn't ask the serpent anything.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
Two, which made me go back and I'm like, well, what is at the time the serpent was talking to the woman, what is the relationship between the serpent and the woman at that point? Because I don't even think the first question, while with the intent of deceit, it was a problem, right? Because let's assume the serpent is at this point a beast of the field, and the woman is just another form of mankind who's been given dominion over everything. It's basically just something coming to its master, right? The woman and the man, which asking him, well, did God really say you should not eat from any of the tree of the garden? And the woman, who's in charge of all of the earth, right? At least in the garden, says, we can eat of the fruit of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, don't eat from the tree in the middle, don't even touch it. Okay. I think at that point isn't the deception. It sets up the stage for deception. But I guess what that means is the relationship between the woman and the serpent is really, it should be master and servant, right? And I'm wondering, like, then it switches to this strange thing when the serpent just says, well, no, that's wrong, right? You're not going to die, which is very, very, very strange. And then the fact that God doesn't, like, at least in the story, address the serpent to hear what he has to say, I think that's what leads to us a lot of like, oh, what's the serpent? Who's this? Is this really the devil? What's the nature of this? Where did this come from? I think that omission is kind of interesting.
What if, I know you keep going back to, and I get why, like, okay, this beast of the field, right, that we're supposed to have dominion over comes to us, but what if we interpreted that instead as the world around you is going to pose questions, like of the things that you've been told, right? And I think, like, I don't know if we've said this before, but I remember I was talking to a family member about faith, and I think like a real test of faith is when that's all you have to rely on, right? So it's easy to be faithful and say, I believe in God and I trust God, but now when God's the only thing you could rely on because everything around you is not something you can lean on, right? Will you actually lean on God? Are you going to try to stable yourself, right? So I think in this moment, it's just like the world around you said, why don't you eat this? You know what I mean? Just like there was a doubt put in your mind, you know what I mean? Because of, if you're a parent, maybe your kid asked you, or maybe someone who's not a believer asked you, or whatever. It might not be a thing that asked you. Maybe it's an event that happened in the world that questions what you're doing and how you're practicing the faith in the way that you believe you should be. right? And so the response is like, we do it because we were told to, right? In those moments where we don't have an answer to why God is asking us to do X, and it's just because we're told to, because I think there's a lot of things that we could kind of suss out why, and there's a lot of stuff where it's like, I can't explain that, but I have to have the faith that because it's been shown in the other moments, like I have a reason to trust God. I think that's a good synonym for faith here. And I'm going to do what he's asking me here, even though I don't understand why. So I think once that opportunity, of, well, just because he told me to, but I don't know why, then the world is automatically going to go, well, maybe it's not right. Maybe he's not right. Maybe you actually could just do that. Maybe you can do that thing. And I think that's it makes me think of people who like cherry pick what parts of with any religion they follow and what parts they don't, because, well, this doesn't make sense to me. And I've decided like, that's kind of what it sounds like. It's not as much about, hey, there's this beast of the field. It's more like a representation of like something in the world around you,
that's
whatever that
interesting.
is.
So then you're basically saying that, let's assume we attribute it to Satan, right? Or devil, or whatever you want to call it. It's really just some spiritual entity or supernatural entity using physical or material things to tempt you, right?
Well, that's why it sounds like you're the way you guys talked about Satan, and I don't know what word should I be using, by the way.
Matter.
Just doesn't matter. Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about. It sounds like that is just like the potential of bad, right? Of me making the wrong choice, right? I don't even want to say the temptation sometimes, but even the potential of being tempted, right? That's kind of what it's like, this nefarious force. I know you said spirit, but that exists in the world around us, right?
Yeah,
it's not.
It is. It's not a physical entity. I would.
Yeah, but it's also not something that is like, I'm gonna get you. You know what I mean? It's
not
like
a boogeyman.
It's just this thing. Yeah, it's just this thing that we have to contend with. That there's the potential of that we just have to always avoid, right? And I think this is obviously a representation of like, and because we are vulnerable in that way, and will sometimes, allow that to happen to us, that's why we're here and not there, right? And to me, like, I guess that's what original sin is, right? Is like the reason that we are here and not there. And it's because when we have not proven yet that when there's nothing else to lean on except for God, that we lean on God every time.
I think that the story of being in the Garden of Eden, exactly from that point of view, is very interesting, because they had no reason to not believe God at that point, right? He gave them everything.
Yeah.
And so in this one moment of weakness, right, humans still thought, oh, maybe God, even though he gave me everything, right, maybe there's a reason to not, to have reservations about what he said, or to not fully follow what he said. So and then you put that in the context of your own life, and it just, makes me think a million times when it's like, yeah, things didn't go my way. Maybe I was going through a really hard time for whatever reason. And, like, it's tempting to compromise your moral values for something, right? Or whatever that may be, or give up, or, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, that's very interesting to put from a point of view, Franklin. Thank you. And I think something I'm personally reflecting on a lot, Natasha, is what you said, is the difference between shame and guilt. And
That's good.
I'm not entirely sure if this ties into what we were talking about, so I might be changing the topic a little bit. But right when you said that, shame, feeling like you're hiding from it, guilt, like you're kind of more owning up to it, I guess, in a sense, or being forced to reconcile with it. The people in my life that I know that have maybe lost their faith or lost their connection to organized religion or just God in general, sometimes I have, when talking to them, it seems like it comes from a source of shame. And it's that they feel like they're not worthy of redemption. And but then the people that are, like, do have an active relationship with God are, like, they recognize they've made mistakes in their life, but they're trying to be better. And I think it's kind of like, this is getting more into the New Testament or something, but I forget which saint it was. I think it was like one of the fathers of the church or something like that. So I'll have to look this up. He said when he was a young man, he was, not the most moral person. He would, sleep with women, unmarried, and all these things, and he would pray for God to make him a chaste man.
Mm.
But in his heart, he was saying, "But not yet."
Mm.
He wasn't ready to change, and that was shame.
Wow,
He was
I feel
dealing
that.
with some
Yeah.
level of shame, and then guilt ultimately would be like, "I did those things. I feel guilty, but I'm ready to change." And that's so. I'm going to
Wow.
be reflecting on that a lot in terms of this story, in terms of our conversation about the chapter 3 and how God got them from shame to guilt, which was actually that's like such a I don't know, such an amazing thing to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be reflecting on most.
Yeah.
You made that really applicable to. You took Natasha's idea and made that really applicable to at least my life.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I was like, "Whoa!" I have had those moments where in the back of my mind, I'm like, "But maybe not right now. I'm having a good time."
Yeah.
Which is-
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Really came at me there. But I mean, who
So-
asked us?
Yeah. I did want to finish out by finishing out this part.
Yeah.
God kind of kicks them out. Kicks them out of the garden, saying,
Peace out.
mankind has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. So, lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever, we gotta kind of kick him out, right? And that's kind of what they do. They kick mankind out of the garden. And I guess my question here is that the fulfillment of the "in the day you eat of it, you'll surely die"?
That's what I think. I think
Me
that
as
is
well.
the death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's. I do. I have an inkling that the Garden of Eden sounded like eternal life, like heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're not there anymore. And now you have to go suffer in the fields, and you will be dust again. And you will just be dust again. You will not be saved. You will be dust. And that's the death.
What about the reasoning though? Like, the man has become like us, knowing good and evil. So we don't want him to live forever.
I think it sounds like, because he didn't, the way you described it, it sounded like they were like, "Oh, we can't let them also get this other tree, so get them out before they do." It more sounded like, "All right, well, they cheated half of this, right? So let's not." And if Natasha was saying, like, we're supposed to eventually, yes, be like God via our relationship with God, and we cut the corner here, right? But we didn't finish the entire job, so to speak. So it almost sounds like God's like, "All right, well, we're not going to give you the opportunity to continue cutting the corner.
Well,
So I'm going to put you out in this way."
In the story, there was no prohibition against the tree of life, right?
I think it was because it says, like, it doesn't say just don't eat from this tree. It's like, don't eat from these trees in the midst, or I forget exactly how it was phrased, but it was definitely multiple trees.
No, wait. It says, "You may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat, you shall surely die." It doesn't
I guess
mention.
I'm thinking of Eve's response later, where she says, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall." Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is in the. I guess, like, I know it sounds silly, but when it says, I guess in that moment, because it says in the midst, I guess it like sounded like an area rather than just this tree.
Which I mean, I agree with, like, maybe, but I also think, like,
No, you're right. It
just to
specifically
emphasize
says
there,
earlier.
I think there is some sort of distortion between what God says and what Eve understands. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually true, but, like, I'm taking it that way because there's so much difference. Like, in my brain, like, don't touch and also in the mist seem too general, and, like, there's some sort of, like, dissonance with what God said and what Eve is saying to the serpent. But yeah, to hone in on Kenneth's point, is it, like, if we are gonna, not saying that we have to agree, but if we're, like, prefacing it like that God only said not to eat from the tree of good and evil and not both trees, like, what does that mean with how he responded? Like Kenneth is asking, what if that wasn't a stipulation he had initially put but now is putting?
It almost, I mean, it sounds like we were allowed to then eat from the tree of eternal life. And that sounds like, it's funny because in my head now I'm like, and now we're no longer allowed to. And so now we may die.
Yeah.
But that also, like, I guess in my head, it's like, well, if I ate from that tree, I guess I can't die. But I guess it's like, I don't know, maybe it's something you have to keep coming. If you have access to it, you have eternal life. And if you do not have access to it, you do not have eternal life.
Because if we take it the other way where we're not allowed to have either of them, then in this like Garden of Eden, we did not have everlasting life. Right? Like, so if we weren't allowed to like access the tree of, sorry, I get all of them mixed up, but the tree of life, of everlasting life, if we weren't allowed to access it, then in Garden of Eden, there would have been death in lowercase d death.
Yeah. But I guess like, okay, so did they eat from it? Did they ever eat from the tree of life? Because like in my head, it sounds like once you eat this fruit, you have
an
the
apple
gift
a day,
that the
you
tree
live forever.
gives.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did it say
Mm-hmm.
the tree of life had fruit?
Oh,
So this is gonna sound really
what if it
weird.
didn't have fruit?
There was a pastor that I had a conversation with once, and he was a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, and he said like he considers reading Lord of the Rings like almost a religious experience because of all the symbolism and connection that Tolkien put in there. And
Fair.
like if you think of the elves from Lord of the Rings, if you're familiar, it's like they have these trees of light, and so and it's like they don't eat anything from there. It's just that's like kind of provides them with their whatever their power. So I think I don't. This is
You think it's
not
just
saying
being
obviously
in
the Bible
midst of
came
the
first.
trees?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's. I'd have to do a more close reading and maybe even look at some of the different translations and talk to some priests and stuff and see to get a better idea of that distinction there, because that's something Franklin, you're probably I think you mentioned it first during this conversation. I don't think I ever even thought of that, like the fact that there were two trees. You know what I mean? Like this is the first time I read this in a long time as well. So absolutely, yeah.
It does say that every tree, in verse 9 of chapter 2, it says, God made to spring up every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. So it makes me think that every tree is good for food. So there is fruit on a tree. I don't know. It's definitely a nuance that we can, I think, keep pulling at. But I do think it's interesting, that thought, and I'm like, this doesn't match with the character of God that I have in my mind, but I do think it's interesting that God's like, oh, you already ate of one, we can't let you eat of the other, like, leave.
Well, I think there's two ways to take that, Natasha. I think you could take it as like, ooh, don't let them be like us, we don't want them to be like us.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also take that as like, all right, I let you, like, I caught you cheating on the test halfway through the test. I'm not going to give you the opportunity to continue cheating on the test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, you're right.
Like, one is for your good and one is like, don't be like me, so I think that's
and
definitely
that
a fair
aligns
distinction.
more with the character of God that we know,
I think so,
right?
yeah.
Exactly. That second, like, it is for your betterment. I am your father. I'm looking out for you. This is for your betterment. It's just, it's also like him, like, reading, like, lest they become like us. I think that phrase specifically just is a little uncomfy when you read it, where it's just
I got the same reaction that you have. I'm just like, but that doesn't, like, obviously it's like, but that's not the God we know. So it can't be that,
Exactly.
Also, who is God talking to?
Well, you mentioned this before, like the us, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the us before, so I'm defaulting to you guys because I didn't even know that there was a possibility of other gods. I didn't know there'd be like a hierarchy of gods.
Well, I mean, I think of it as God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, and the Trinity being the us that God is referring to throughout this.
I saw something. Yeah. I did glance. I'm not gonna lie, at the study side of the Bible at that part, not on purpose. It was just like kind of habit.
It's there for you to use.
Something. No, but like we said before, I don't want it to influence my reading. I kind of want to be able to think first, right?
Sure.
Maybe I'll go through it after we've spoken and kind of see what's going in there. But like, it said something about like the pantheon of gods, or like I could even go back and find council. Yes, exactly. That I got heavenly host or God's council, and I don't really know exactly what that means yet. So
Yeah. I mean, I think there are. I don't think God's talking to himself. I think he is talking to other spiritual things. And maybe one of the cherubim too. Like it doesn't. I think there are I think what the serpent said was kind of true, in the little g gods or the spiritual entities or ghosts, whatever you want to call it. There's not a real good word in English for it, and I don't think lowercase g gods is a good translation because of how people perceive that to me.
Yeah.
But I do think God's saying like, hey, mankind now knows good and evil. Now they're not just my physical representations in this natural world. They are now transcended to this type of morally culpable and people, right? Who can who know right and wrong and can choose right and wrong, and they're not just going around and taking care of trees. So we don't want them to live forever right now either. Let's protect it. And then he sends out the cherubim to protect and kick them out of Eden.
that brought up a really interesting point. They didn't eat from that tree before, so did they know the difference between right and wrong? Or I guess that's different than good and evil. I guess.
Wait,
I don't know.
What? Can you rephrase that?
I forget exactly how you just said it, Kenneth, but like it popped into my head that like they hadn't eaten from the tree of good and evil. So they did not know what was good and what was evil.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I think when the Bible says their eyes were open and they realized, I think their eyes really, because there's a
but it's just hard to
too
consider
when people
that.
say, well, there's a concept too that people say like when a child reaches like the age of consciousness or age of accountability,
Which I remember, by the way, and I'll tell you guys
yeah,
that story
where all of a
the
sudden
time.
the child starts to like actually realize there's consequences to actions. There is right and wrong. There's things they should or shouldn't do. They're not just operating out of their base needs, but they're operating now out of a conscious type of way of moving and operating. And I'm not saying that's exactly what this is, but I'm saying a similar concept of, I don't think Adam and Eve, before eating the fruit in this story, I don't think in the story that they were like how we are now. Where we
well, yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So but just that's why I had trouble thinking of it, because like Adam and Eve, I'm like, okay, that's man and I'm man, so like they're like me, but this is pre that. So it's just interesting. I guess good and bad is not, or right and wrong is not synonymous with good and evil. I think that's definitely a fair point to just say before I even say what I was going to say, which is like, so can they be held accountable for that thing? I guess you could argue yes, because it's not the same. You know, good and evil is different from right and wrong, and
they were only given one rule, and I think you can be held accountable for laws.
Well, I guess I could even well, I was about to say like my dog doesn't know what's right and wrong, but he understands that if I say sit, he's supposed to sit. You know,
because you gave him a law, you gave him a rule. Once
exactly.
you give him a rule, he's held accountable.
I guess knowledge of good and evil now allows us. It's almost like it's almost merciful of God to say like, I'm kicking you out, but it's almost like
actually,
I'm kicking you out, but I'm allowing you to keep what you got from that tree, right? So maybe, for example, you do have to keep eating of the trees to be able to receive their gifts, right? And I know it's not explicitly stated, but it seems like he's like, all right, they have this, I'm allowing them to keep it in this world, and that's why we're not like, he didn't just kick us out and we have nothing. He still gave us some tools to be able to now work towards. It's like I know, Natasha, you talk about the relationship with God a lot, but it's like we have to we're individually on our own, and I guess as a collective, repairing our relationship with God. You know, making up for the sins of the past. You know, right?
I also think it's super interesting that in verse 21 it says, "And the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin and clothed them." Like, I don't know. I think that is also just such a mercy and such a epitome of love, that like Adam and Eve thought they needed clothes and they tried to like finagle something for themselves, and God's like, yeah, even in sin, this is a concern for you, and I will provide for that concern.
Yeah. Like you shouldn't need to clothe yourself.
Yeah.
But I'll clothe you if that's what you need right now.
Exactly. Isn't that like such a mercy, such a a beauty? I can't even.
And people say the God in this testament's mean.
No, I really don't think he is, honestly. I think he's kind of the same. I do think though it's interesting. There is an enmity. There's like a us versus them. Assuming the serpent really is the devil, like there is definitely an us versus them mentality from the start.
Yeah.
And I think it's only going to get worse. And I think the fact that God doesn't just blatantly destroy humanity, but kicks them out for their own good and then has this whole plan to take care of them and is going to make the serpent even more angry over time. So we'll see what happens.
I think this is a good place to call it. I feel like this is like it's got enough foreshadowing, but like it's the conversation of mercy is a nice place to go. Okay, he's got us.
I like the exhale.
Right into the microphone, nice and warm, right?
Yeah.
Any media recommendations for us for the final
I love it.
part of the episode?
Yeah, just straight up, nothing to do with the episode, but Corey Wong is been killing it lately, so just give him a listen.
I don't know if you guys have heard of Lord of the Rings. I'd recommend that.
No.
Yeah,
I've
it's a good
actually
one.
never watched Lord of the Rings before.
I haven't
not
either.
gonna lie.
But you haven't watched it, seriously?
Well, I keep saying like, oh, I'll read the book. You know what I mean? I also haven't watched The Passion of Christ because I was like, I'll read the book.
I'm too scared
maybe
to
I'll
watch
be
The
able to watch
Passion
it.
of Christ. I haven't watched
Me too.
it either. I'm too terrified.
It's not easy to watch.
It's pretty graphic, I think, for no reason.
I don't
But,
think I want to see it.
Yeah, but no, I keep telling myself I'll read the book and then, don't
There's
know
a
how to
book
read, so.
for the Passion of the Christ. Like
No.
It's called the
It's called the Bible. I was talking about